with Geisa Fernandes. Hello and welcome to Comics and Jazz, the podcast. I am Geisa Fernandes, singer, songwriter and researcher, and you are my guest on this visual and musical journey. Quick recap. In the first episode, I gave you some context about my research and some examples on how the universes of comics and jazz interacting. Today, we start by quoting multimedia artist Gil Meyer on his series of paintings called Jazz.
I am trying to make it visually stimulating and orally interesting. I like people to see my work and hear music. It is a testament to my creativity and my interest in this medium.
The spontaneous nature of jazz is often mentioned by musicians and listeners, but it was not always unanimous among its theorists. German philosopher Theodor Wiesengond Adorno is a famous example of a jazz hater. He saw improvisation as a negative point, a characteristic that, according to his view, depreciated the genre. Between 1933 and 1953, Adorno published several articles distilling the purest hatred against jazz. There is no denying that the philosopher, usually brilliant in his analysis, found in jazz a theoretical challenge which he was unable to overcome. When talking about jazz, Adorno sounds like an excellent pianist playing with boxing gloves. Eventually, he'll reach one or two right notes, accidentally, but overall, the action produces a rather unpleasant result. As a deep admirer of the Frankfurt School in general, and particularly a fan of Adorno, to the point of giving his name to one of my songs, yes, that's how much of a fan I am, I consider his articles on jazz as, let us say, minor material in his otherwise vast and amazing production.
I wanna be your pet, your maiden, your lady of honor, like Adorno to Hochheim. I wanna be devoted, promoted to the highest position among all objects of your acquisition. Make me your favorite, your flavor, your size and definition, your princess, your illness, obsession or abuse. Use me as your muse, I'm as your assistant, an instant of joy, and then make me yours.
In fact, we will dialogue in different moments of our reflections with various concepts of Adorno, such as cultural industry. That said, let us move on to perhaps the first partnership between jazz and the visual arts. I'm talking about Stravinsky and Picasso. First of all, a few words on Ragtime. Scott Joplin is one of the main exponents of ragtime, a musical genre that incorporates African and European syncopation. It should be noted that, as it happens with classical music, ragtime was distributed written in sheet music. Keep this information in mind for later, as it will be very useful when we talk about the importance of improvisation in jazz. So let's get back to Stravinsky. The Russian artist knew ragtime written but not played. Stravinsky came in contact with some of these written transcriptions of ragtime music. They were brought to him from the United States by his friend, conductor Ernest Ansermet, in the late 1910s. Later, in 1918, Stravinsky released Ragtime, a work composed for a small orchestra of strings, winds, brass, and percussion, which cover illustration was signed by Pablo Picasso, a friend of the maestro. The version of Stravinsky for ragtime incorporates elements of the Russian modernity. For critic Lawrence Budman,
Ragtime for 11 instruments represents the uniquely personal take of Stravinsky on the new genre coming from the United States. At once witty, dissonant and hard-driving, the work might be considered ragtime with a modern Russian accent.
the fact that Picasso illustrated the cover of the composition reinforces the ties between jazz and the modernist avant-garde, which identified with the genre precisely because of its free character. Like Stravinsky, Picasso recognized jazz as a new field for artistic experimentation. If you listened to the first episode of Comics and Jazz, you may remember that we mentioned Dutch painter Piet Mondrian. In 1927, Mondrian established a relationship between the visual arts and jazz in an even more explicit way. In his article, Jazz and New Plasticism, he argued that jazz is, along with the new arts movement, a new revolutionary way of dealing with the impositions of the new use of time and space brought by metropolises. And why am I bringing you back the words of Mondrian? Because he will be very important for us to understand the basis in which the jazz aesthetics was founded. You just heard the second episode of Comics and Jazz. Stay tuned for the next episode. Bye! Comics and Jazz. Your visual musical journey with Geisa Fernandes.